Hello and welcome to this very special edition of Exotic Gardening UK Yorkshire Kris Weekly. It's very special because this is the 100th edition of this series of gardening videos. When I started doing this series, it was basically to show what can be done in the north of England for an exotic theme in the garden. So I've gone around showing how I grow the plants, propagate them, which ones I buy, how I overwinter them, and how I get ready for the summer season, and then how I get ready for protecting them over winter. So today's the 100th edition, but I thought what I'd do is actually look back at the very first video I did. So believe it or not, I've been doing videos for over 9 years. So although this is the 100th edition of this series, I've been doing well over 250 videos of gardening. And I want to look back at the first edition because in that very first one we had a lot of the plants that I still have in the garden now. So let's look back at that very first edition, which I think only 400 people watched, and we'll go through the plants in that video and see how they look and what they look like now in 2020. So this is the first video I did, and this was in April 2011. And for people who have not been following me for many years, this was in a previous garden, and I knew I wanted to move to a large garden, so I grew most things in pots that'd be easy to transport. So in this video you'll see lots of plants, especially palms, in pots. And if you look on the right hand side, you can see a nice Trachycarpus wagnerensis, and then on the left is how it looks today. It's flowering, it's full of nice foliage, and it's got about 1 metre of trunk, so it's grown very well compared to the plant on the right there. And then in this picture also we've got the Jabea at the back, and if we look at what the Jabea looks like now, we can see again it's nice and healthy, nice and green. Trunk's got a lot bigger, but it's still a very slow growing plant. So this is 9 years later, and it's still, I mean, it's a good size now, but it's not huge by any means. Here on the top left we've got a Trachycarpus fortunii, but a strange one, and this is what's shown on the right hand side there. So that's grown pretty well because it was in a pot for another 4 or 5 years after this video was taken. In the middle there, a bit blurry, is a Chimerops cerifera, and today you can see again nice and colourful, nice blue, steely blue leaves, very slow growing, but it's bulked out quite a lot as it's been planted now for 4 or 5 years. Here we have the Cycas revoluta that I kept in a pot, and it's very nice and green here. I think this was the first flush of leaves I had, and it's been very slow growing. You can see it's been planted out now for 4 or 5 years in the new garden. Still nice and healthy and green after winter because I do protect it a bit, and it's done about 3 or 4 flushes in the 9 years, so every other year. Now here we have the Washingtonia robusta that I dug up in a recent video, so that's no longer with us. And here's a Trachycarpus that had about 30-40 centimetres of trunk, and it was in a pot, and as soon as I got the new garden this was planted out in sort of a shadier area near the tree ferns, and as you can see now it's a huge tree. It's got about 2 metres of trunk, and it's about 2.5-3 metres tall with the leaves, and it's set seed last year for the first time, and it's just about to flower again once more. So this has grown spectacularly well. It's grown about, what, 2 metres of trunk, or 1.5 to 2 metres of trunk in 9 years, which is not bad when it wasn't planted out for a few years after this initial video was taken. Little bamboos in pots there, and this was one of the tree ferns, the first one I really had. And to the left of that you got a Phormium, and this nearly died. It nearly died because winter 2010 was the worst on record, at least in 100 years in length and duration, and coldness down to -10. So even things like Phormiums nearly died, but this one just hung on, and it was dug up, brought to my new garden, and it's doing really well now. As we move around the garden, you can see this tree fern didn't make it. This was the year that I didn't protect anything. It was the coldest on record, so that wasn't a good idea. And neither did this very hardy palm tree, the Wagnerensis, because it was in a pot. This was an Alocasia, which I've since given away. And I grew lots of plants that were not tropical. but things like the Fatsia obviously I've continued to keep, and all the ground ferns, all these here are still in the new garden. The Fatsias, they've grown pretty well, as you can see, and this apple tree I left behind. Nice blue fences we had back then. That's one of the Fatsia variegators, which we have at the back of the garden now, doing well. Not spectacularly fast growing, but it's about 4 or 5 times bigger than what it is then. We have the Colocages, that's Colocasia fontensii, which we do still have, and the gingers there, which we still have, and some of the tree ferns. And this is a Butia odorata, which was very small in about a 10-litre pot there, and look at it now, absolutely magnificent, really sped up since it's been in the ground. It's about 1.5, a bit taller than that, metres high and across, so that's done really well, very happy with that. Now the tree ferns, the Cyathias like this one, this is Cyathea delbata. This did survive several years in the new garden, but it dried out too much basically, and it never really settled in. More Colocages, still got many of these. That's Colocasia mojito, amazing sort of camouflage like leaves. Thalia debata in a pot there, still have it, it's in the pond basically, so that's still fine. Another look at the Cyathea delbata. Beautiful, stunning one, but now we have the other Lophosaria quinupinata, which is a similar sort of look and doing well in the new garden. Eucalyptus trees grew from seed, and one of these is in the new garden, the rest didn't make it because they dried out basically, if I remember. And another Wagneranus, which is growing well in the front garden, which is again about 1 metre tall. This is a Trachycarpus fortunii, and as you can see here, probably to scale, it's about, what, the trunk was about 30-40 centimetres at this time at most. It was about 70-80 centimetres tall with the leaves, something like that, and this was bought really cheap. It was about £10–15, and this was dug up and brought to the new garden, and it was planted about 5 years ago, and now it's doing really, really well in the new garden. It's flowering. Here we have the Tetrapanax rex. As you know, I've got absolutely loads of these in the garden, about 2.5–3 metres tall for this particular one. I've got this one in the front garden and the back garden, and many suckers around the garden. This is a Butia odorata, I believe, and this was given away to somebody. This was what looked, well, this is the Musa Baju, which got hit really hard down to ground level because of the really, really cold winter, but it came back, as you can see, and now it's planted in my front garden, and it's growing really, really well. Even though we've had a couple of late frosts, we've still got some nice green leaves on it, and it's really set for the season now in 2020 to get huge, and hopefully we might even get a flower and some little mini bananas this year with a bit of luck. So as you can see, back in 2011 it was really cut down to the ground from the winter we just had. I didn't think it was going to make it, to be honest, but look, you can see lots of pups, which made lots of plants that could spread about the new garden. So it is a very hardy plant. This is Agave Americana Media Picta, which is still in a pot in the new garden. As I said, I like my blue fences back then. And it was a very small garden we had. It's just about as long as a garage, so compare that to my new garden. This area covered basically from the back door to where the greenhouse is in my new garden. This is a potted bamboo, Phylostachys parvifolia, and as you can see now, it's absolutely huge, many metres tall, a couple of metres wide and spread. And this is one of the cold hardy timber bamboos. It's doing really, really well. Back then it was just a few very scrawny little culms in a pot. So that's growing well. This was a Livingstonia australis, which I let dry out one year, which was very bad of me before I got it planted in the ground, which is disappointing. And this is something that I did try, Cyagrus, which is far too, well, slow growing in my climate, so it didn't really get going and faded away over time. My greenhouse back then was 6 by 4 foot greenhouse, and I kept my aeonium. So that aeonium you just saw there, that's the mother of pretty much all the aeoniums I have now in the front garden of my current garden. Here we've got some colour cages, got a little bird of paradise back there, and some little princeps palms, all sorts of seedlings, and this was the alocasia. Fantastic specimen, and this grew quite a big trunk. So you see there's no trunk on that at all, but over the years it grew quite a big trunk, and eventually I just ran out of space for it. It didn't come back one year. When I let it dry off, I didn't get it going again. Now these princeps palms, look how small they are, really tiny trunks on those, but look at it now. It's much bigger plant, about 70-80 centimetres across, nice big leaves, still very slow growing after 9 years. It's, you know, it's still not knee high at all. But I had several of these. I've just shown you one of what it looks like now, but there's several around the garden. I think I had about 4 or 5 or 6 of these, mostly now planted around the big Jabea chilensis in the new garden. And I had a lot of gingers. I've still got some gingers now, but this one here was called Hedychium verite. Fantastic variegated leaves, and I had loads of these. I sold quite a lot of these, and the one I did keep, I just planted out, and it does come back every year, but really it needs to be kept going over winter because it's an evergreen plant, and it does much better if you can keep it growing over winter. This is Hedychium greenii, which we have in the garden, that comes up, and this is the bamboo, Phyllostachys vivax auriculis, in a big pot back then, but now, as you can see, it's in the front garden, and it's absolutely magnificent, covers a large area. So that was my first video, and showing what the plants look like then, and that's what they look like now. So hopefully you've enjoyed this video.